The affair I thought was just a fling, until it changed everything. I never imagined my life would come to this. I never thought I'd be sitting here, typing out this story, wondering if I can ever fix the broken pieces of my marriage. It all started as a stupid decision, something I convinced myself would never matter. But looking back now, I realize how foolish I was. It wasn't just a fling. It wasn't just a mistake. It changed everything. Let me backtrack and give you a bit of context. My name is Sarah, and I've been married to Mark for 7 years. We met in college, and from the very beginning, we clicked. We shared the same sense of humor, similar values, and goals for the future. I thought we had everything figured out, two people who were meant to be together forever. We got married 2 years after graduating, and life, in general, was good. We had a house, 2 dogs, and a routine that made me feel safe. I never really thought about the word boredom until now. But I'll admit, somewhere along the way, I started to feel stagnant. Life became predictable. It wasn't that Mark wasn't a great husband, he was. He was kind, thoughtful, and supportive. He had a stable job, and I worked as a marketing executive at a small firm. But somewhere in the routine of our daily lives, I found myself yearning for something more. Something exciting, something unpredictable. It wasn't like I didn't love my husband anymore, I did. I just wanted more, and I didn't know how to ask for it. So, I pushed those feelings aside and carried on. That was until I met Jason. Jason worked in the same building as me. He was in a completely different department, and we never interacted much at first. But then, one day, our paths crossed at a work function. I don't know what it was about him. Maybe it was his confidence, the way he laughed, or the way he looked at me as if I was the only person in the room, but I couldn't help but feel a spark. At first, it was innocent. We'd exchange small talk in the office kitchen or send a quick text here and there about a work project. But then, one day, it happened. He asked me to grab a coffee after work. At the time, I thought it was harmless. After all, I was just meeting a colleague for a drink, right? I told myself that nothing would come of it. I could enjoy the conversation and return home to my husband, who I knew would be waiting for me with a smile. The conversation that night wasn't anything special. We talked about work, about life, about nothing in particular. But something shifted in that moment. I felt heard in a way I hadn't felt in a while. Jason made me feel alive, and for the first time in months, I felt important. I could see how he looked at me, and I was flattered. The attention felt good, and for the first time in a while, I allowed myself to feel desired. We continued meeting for coffee, and eventually, it wasn't just coffee. It turned into a dinner here, a late-night drink there. It wasn't long before I found myself emotionally invested. Jason started to fill a void that I didn't even know was there. I felt a connection that was different from the one I had with Mark. With Mark, it was safe. It was comfortable. With Jason, it was electrifying. And that's when it happened. I made the choice to cross the line. One night, after a few too many glasses of wine, we kissed. It wasn't planned. It wasn't something I had been thinking about. It just happened. The kiss turned into more, and the next thing I knew, I was in his apartment, doing things with him that I had never imagined doing with anyone else. For weeks after that, I convinced myself that it was just a fling. It was a moment of weakness, a temporary escape from the monotony of my life. I told myself that it didn't mean anything, that it was a one-time thing. But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. The guilt was unbearable, but I kept telling myself that I deserved it. After all, hadn't I been working so hard to be the perfect wife, the perfect employee? Maybe I needed something for me, something just for myself. Jason made me feel like I was worth more than the person I saw in the mirror. But as I continued seeing him, I started to realize that I was losing sight of who I was. I wasn't just betraying Mark, I was betraying myself. Then, everything changed. I came home one night after a meeting with Jason. I had just started to feel the weight of what I was doing, and I was finally beginning to feel like I needed to stop. I walked into our house, and Mark was sitting on the couch. He was quiet, staring at something on his phone. I could tell something was off. When he looked up at me, his eyes were filled with a mixture of pain and suspicion. "Where have you been?" he asked softly, his voice shaking. I froze. Mark never asked me where I'd been. We had always trusted each other, and I'd never given him any reason to doubt me. But something in the way he asked that question made me feel like my secret was about to be exposed. I was at work, I said, trying to sound casual. His eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of something: anger, hurt, confusion. "You've been distant lately," he said quietly, almost to himself. "I've noticed. Is there something you need to tell me?" I felt the ground beneath me shift. I couldn't lie to him anymore. The guilt crushed me, but I was too afraid to come clean. The words wouldn't come, and my silence spoke louder than anything I could say. "I know," he said, his voice breaking. "I know what's going on, Sarah. I know about Jason." My heart stopped, the room spun around me, and I felt like I was suffocating. How had he found out? I didn't want to believe it, Mark continued, tears welling up in his eyes. "But I saw the texts. The late nights, the way you've been acting. I wasn't sure at first, but I knew. I've been lying to myself, thinking I could ignore it. But now I can't. I can't keep pretending that everything is okay." I wanted to apologize, to beg for his forgiveness, but the words didn't come. I felt like I had already lost him, and nothing I could say would undo what I had done. He had already figured it out. The damage was done. Mark was heartbroken. He didn't yell at me or blame me. Instead, he said the one thing that shattered me completely. "I think I've given you everything I can, Sarah. I just don't know if I can do this anymore. I don't know if I can trust you again." And that was when the full weight of what I had done hit me. What I thought was just a meaningless fling, a temporary escape, had shattered my marriage. I had betrayed my husband, the person who had stood by me for years, the person who had trusted me completely. Now, I am left with the consequences of my actions. I've tried to make amends, but it feels like too little, too late. I've hurt him in ways I never imagined. Mark has asked for space, and I've given it to him, but I don't know if we can ever come back from this. Every day, I wonder what to do. Can I salvage my marriage, or have I destroyed it beyond repair? I love him. There's no doubt in my mind about that. But I also know that I've lost his trust, and I don't know if he can ever forgive me. I never thought an affair, something I once viewed as a fleeting moment, would spiral into something so devastating. Now, I am left with the consequences of my choices, hoping for a chance to make things right. But I can't help but wonder, if trust is broken, can it ever truly be repaired?